I stood in the empty banquet hall at 7 p.m., staring at the happy 18th birthday Aria banner I'd hung myself, watching my phone light up with message after message. Not one was someone saying they'd be late to my party. Every single text was a photo from my sister Meredith's impromptu 21st birthday celebration, the one she'd announced exactly 3 days ago, scheduled for the exact same time as mine. The caterer I'd paid for with money from my part-time job gave me a pitying look. "Should we start packing up, sweetie?" I felt the familiar tingling at the base of my skull, the one that had started 6 months ago when I'd flatlined on an operating table after a accidental fall down the stairs. The one that meant my gift was activating. In my previous life, I'd died at 18. Not at this party, but 3 months from now, from complications of another accident that I now knew had been carefully orchestrated. I'd died never knowing that my entire family had been systematically destroying me to elevate Meredith, never understanding why I always felt so alone. But death had given me something precious, the truth and a second chance. "No," I told the caterer, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "We're not packing up. Leave everything exactly as it is. I want photos of all of it, the untouched food, the empty tables, the decorations, every detail." She looked confused, but nodded. I pulled out my phone and began documenting everything, the three-tier cake I'd saved for months to afford, the carefully arranged photo collage of my childhood, noticeably absent of family photos because I'd learned early that I was never the one they wanted in the frame. The gift table with exactly one present on it, the bracelet I'd bought myself because I knew no one else would. My phone buzzed again. Another photo from Meredith's party. This time it was my mother, wearing the designer dress I'd seen her shopping for last week. The same day she'd told me we couldn't afford to chip in for my party venue. "Just a small celebration at the community center," she'd said, patting my hand with false sympathy. "You understand, darling, we have to be practical. Not everyone needs a big fuss for their birthday." But Meredith needed a spontaneous party at the Crystal Rose, the most expensive venue in the city. Meredith needed a live band. Meredith needed a guest list of 200 people. Meredith needed my birthday to be ruined. I scrolled through my phone to the photos I'd been collecting, the evidence I'd been gathering since I woke up in my 16-year-old body with memories of a life already lived. In that first life, I'd been too naive, too desperate for their love to see what was happening. This time, I saw everything, and I knew exactly what was coming. Let me take you back to the beginning, to the moment I realized I'd been given the most dangerous gift of all, the ability to see the pattern before it destroyed me, again. I was 6 years old when my mother brought Meredith home. My father had died 2 years earlier, a good man by all accounts, who'd left us a substantial life insurance policy and a trust fund in my name, accessible when I turned 18. My mother mourned for exactly 6 months before she met Richard Harris at a charity gala. Richard was wealthy, charming, and came with a 4-year-old daughter who looked like a porcelain doll. Meredith had golden curls and wide blue eyes that my mother cooed over constantly. I had my father's dark hair and sharp features, features my mother increasingly looked at with what I now recognized as resentment. "Aria, darling, why don't you let Meredith play with your dollhouse?" my mother would say, her voice sweet, but her eyes hard. "You're older. You should share." I shared. I shared my toys, my room when Meredith decided she liked mine better, my birthday parties when my mother started combining them to save money. I shared and shared and shared until there was nothing left that was mine alone, except the trust fund, the one thing they couldn't touch until I turned 18. In my first life, I never made it to 18 with that money intact. I died at 18, but the real death had started years earlier. It started with small things: forgotten permission slips, lost homework, birthday gifts that never materialized. It escalated in middle school when I started excelling academically. Suddenly, my textbooks would vanish. My completed projects would be accidentally destroyed. I'd study for weeks for a test, only to wake up the morning of the exam violently ill from food poisoning. Meanwhile, Meredith glided through school with mysterious straight A's, despite the fact that I'd once found her paying another student to complete her assignments. High school was when the real campaign began. I was 15 when I overheard my mother and Richard in his study. The trust fund becomes accessible in 3 years, my mother was saying. If something were to happen to Arya before then, the money would default to me as her guardian, and then, naturally, to Meredith as our primary heir. Barbara, what exactly are you suggesting? Richard's voice was cautious but interested. I'm saying that accidents happen, darling, especially to teenage girls who are so very clumsy and depressed. She's already isolated, no friends, always alone. It wouldn't be hard to establish a pattern of instability. I'd pressed myself against the wall outside the study, my whole body shaking. My own mother was planning my death, but I was too young, too scared to know what to do with that information. I tried to be more careful, but how do you protect yourself from the people who control every aspect of your life? They held my food, my shelter, my very existence in their hands. The accidents started small. A push near the top of the stairs that I managed to catch myself from. Medication that made me drowsy and disoriented appearing in my vitamins, my car's brake line loosening, discovered only because a teacher noticed fluid leaking in the school parking lot. I tried to tell people. I tried to tell my school counselor, but my mother came in crying about my paranoid delusions, and suddenly I was the one in therapy, being medicated for anxiety and depression I didn't actually have. The pills made everything foggy, made it harder to think, harder to protect myself. By 17, I was barely surviving. I had no friends. They'd all been systematically driven away by Meredith's rumors and social manipulation. I had no allies. Every adult in my life believed my mother's concerned act. I had nothing but the desperate hope that if I could just make it to 18, I could access my trust fund and disappear. I didn't make it. 3 months after my 18th birthday, I had a seizure at dinner. The doctor said it was a reaction to medication, the antidepressants my mother had insisted I needed. But I'd heard her and Richard whispering as I was loaded into the ambulance, their voices tight with worry that wasn't for me. Did you give her too much? Richard hissed. It should have looked natural, my mother replied. Like suicide. Why isn't it working? I survived that attempt, but I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. When I came home, I was weaker, more vulnerable. The trust fund had been accessed by my mother, who'd gotten emergency power of attorney while I was incapacitated. The money was being managed for my care. It was disappearing into Richard's failing business ventures. I tried to fight. I tried to get a lawyer, but I was 18 and classified as mentally unstable. My mother had documentation going back years showing my decline. No one would listen. The final accident happened on a December evening. I was carrying laundry down the basement stairs I'd been up and down 1,000 times. But the light was out, and the top step was wet with something slippery. My foot went out from under me, and I tumbled down the entire flight, my head cracking against the concrete floor at the bottom. I remember lying there, unable to move, staring up at the dark square of the doorway above. I remember Meredith's face appearing, looking down at me. She was on her phone, but she wasn't calling 911. She was texting, her fingers moving rapidly across the screen, her expression completely blank. Oops, she said finally, her voice flat. Then she closed the door. I died in the dark alone with the realization that my sister had watched me dying and done nothing. When I woke up, I was 16 again, lying in my bed on a random Tuesday morning. My first thought was that I was dreaming. My second thought was that I was in hell. But then I saw the date on my phone, March 15th, 2 years before my death. I spent that entire first day locked in my room, crying and laughing hysterically, trying to make sense of what had happened. I had memories of 2 different timelines, one where I'd lived these years already, and one that was somehow happening again. It took me a week to accept it. I'd been given a second chance, and this time I was going to survive. The first thing I did was stop taking the pills my mother gave me. I pretended to swallow them, then spit them out later. Within days, the fog in my head cleared. I could think again, really think, and what I thought about was revenge. But I had to be smart. I was still trapped in their house, still legally under their control for 2 more years. If I made my move too early, they'd just accelerate their plans. I'd seen how easily they could make me look unstable. I couldn't give them any ammunition. So I played the part. I was the depressed, struggling Arya they expected to see, but secretly I began to prepare. I started documenting everything. Every time my mother forgot to feed me, every time Richard made a cutting comment about my weight or appearance, every time Meredith destroyed something of mine. I kept a journal hidden in the air vent, and I took photos, and I recorded conversations on my phone. I also started looking into my father's trust fund. In my previous life, I'd never questioned the documents my mother had me sign when I was in the hospital. This time, I researched. I learned that what she'd done was illegal, that the emergency power of attorney should have ended once I recovered, that the money should have been locked in the trust until I was 25 according to my father's original will. My mother had forged documents. She'd committed fraud, and I was going to prove it. But proof alone wouldn't be enough. I needed allies, and I needed to be strategic. I started rebuilding relationships they had destroyed. I reached out to my father's family, my grandmother and uncle, who I'd been told didn't want to see me anymore. It was a lie, of course. My mother had cut off contact and forged emails saying I didn't want to speak to them. My grandmother wept when she heard my voice on the phone. Arya? Oh, my darling girl. We've been trying to reach you for years. Your mother said you were too angry about your father's death, that you blamed us. I felt rage burn through me, but I kept my voice steady. I never said that, Grandma. I've missed you so much. We started meeting in secret, coffee shops across town where my mother would never think to look. I told them everything, showed them the evidence I'd been collecting. My Uncle Marcus was a lawyer, and his eyes grew darker with every document he reviewed. This is ironclad, Arya, he said finally. We can take this to court. We can get you out of there. Not yet, I said. If we move now, they'll know I'm on to them. They'll destroy evidence, or worse, they'll accelerate their plans to get rid of me. I need to wait until I'm 18, until I have more legal standing. You want to stay in that house for 2 more years? My grandmother looked horrified. Arya, they tried to kill you. They tried to kill me slowly over time in ways that looked like accidents or mental illness. I corrected, they're not going to do anything obvious now. I'm valuable to them as long as they think they can control me and access my trust fund. But the moment I'm 18 and try to claim what's mine, that's when they'll get desperate. That's when I need to be ready. So I waited. I played my part. I failed classes I could have aced because Arya wasn't supposed to be smart. I stayed isolated because Arya wasn't supposed to have friends. I took the fake pills and pretended to be drowsy and depressed. But I was watching, always watching. I saw Meredith cheat her way through the SATs using a device Richard bought her. I recorded it. I saw my mother embezzle money from the charity she worked for, funneling it into secret accounts. I documented it. I saw Richard's business on the brink of collapse, saw the way they were all depending on my trust fund to save themselves. And I planned. I turned 18 in April. My mother threw me the community center party, the small, pathetic celebration she thought befitted me. Meredith's 21st was in June, just 2 months away. In my previous life, my mother had thrown her a lavish party, spent tens of thousands of dollars celebrating the daughter she actually loved. This time, I decided to give them an opportunity. I let slip to Meredith that I was planning my own 18th birthday party for late June. A real celebration, one I was going to pay for myself with money from my part-time job. I watched her eyes light up with malice. Late June? She said sweetly. That's such a weird time for a birthday party. Your birthday was in April. I know, but I wanted to do something special, something just for me. I've been saving up. I made my voice wistful, vulnerable. I've booked the community center for June 28th. It's going to be small, but it'll be mine. I saw the gears turning in her head, saw the exact moment she decided to ruin it. 3 days later, she announced her birthday party. June 28th at the Crystal Rose. She didn't even try to hide what she was doing. She walked right up to me at dinner and smiled. Mom and Richard are throwing me a party, she said. June 28th. I know that's your little community center thing, but this is my 21st. It's kind of a big deal. You understand, right? I let my face crumple. I let tears well up in my eyes. But that's my party. I already paid for the venue, the caterer. Oh, Arya. My mother's voice was dripping with false sympathy. Surely you can reschedule. Meredith's 21st only happens once. So does my 18th birthday party. My voice rose, cracking perfectly. I already had to share my actual birthday with a tiny party because you said we couldn't afford anything else. This was supposed to be my real celebration. Don't be selfish, Richard snapped. Meredith's party is already planned. Important people are coming, people who could help with her career. Your little party can happen anytime. Everyone's already committed to coming to mine, I protested weakly, knowing it was a lie, knowing they'd make sure of it. Then uninvite them, Meredith said, examining her nails. It's not like you have that many friends anyway. I ran to my room and slammed the door, exactly as they expected. And then I smiled in the darkness. They thought they were destroying me. They didn't realize they were giving me exactly what I needed, one final, public, undeniable act of cruelty. Which brings us back to that empty banquet hall, to me standing alone on what should have been my celebration. I had invited everyone. I'd sent invitations to my extended family, to neighbors, to my mother's friends from the charity, to Richard's business associates. I'd personally called each person to confirm they were coming, had listened to their enthusiastic assurances that they wouldn't miss it. And then I'd watched as one by one they'd all received invitations to Meredith's party. Better invitations. Embossed, expensive, promising an open bar and live entertainment. Invitations that came with a subtle message. This is the party that matters. My mother had been methodical. She'd called each person I'd invited and given them a choice, though it wasn't really a choice at all. I heard the recording later, after I'd hacked the keylogger I'd installed on her laptop. Thank you, YouTube tutorials and 2 years of secretly teaching myself computer science. Oh, you got Arya's invitation? How sweet of her. My mother's voice on the recording was poisonous honey. The thing is, we're throwing Meredith's 21st the same night at the Crystal Rose. I know it's awkward timing, but you understand? 21 is such a milestone. And between you and me, Arya's been struggling so much lately. She's not really in a place for a party. I think she's just acting out, trying to get attention. We're worried about her mental health, honestly. But Meredith is thriving, and we want to celebrate that properly. You'll come to the Crystal Rose, won't you? It would mean so much to our family. Every single person had chosen Meredith's party. Even my mother's sister, Aunt Claire, who'd always claimed to adore me. Even the neighbors who I'd done yard work for since I was 12. Even my high school guidance counselor, who I'd invited because I foolishly thought she might actually care. Every single one. The only person who wasn't at Meredith's party was my grandmother and uncle, but I'd told them to stay away. This night needed to happen exactly as my family had planned it. By 8 p.m., I had dozens of photos documenting the complete desertion. The caterer had left, paid but pitying. I sat alone in the empty hall, surrounded by decorations and untouched food, and I posted to social media. The post was simple. A photo of me sitting alone at the empty head table, wearing the dress I'd bought with money from 3 months of weekend shifts. The caption read, "This is what my 18th birthday party looks like." I spent $200 I saved from my job renting this venue and hiring a caterer. I sent invitations 3 months ago. Everyone confirmed they were coming. Then my sister announced her birthday party on the same night at a better venue 3 days ago. This is my family's idea of love. Happy birthday to me. I tagged everyone who'd been invited. I tagged the Crystal Rose. I tagged my mother and Richard and Meredith. Then I turned off my phone and drove to my grandmother's house. It's done, I told her. Now we wait. We didn't have to wait long. My phone exploded overnight. By the time I turned it back on the next morning, I had thousands of notifications. The post had gone viral. People were furious on my behalf. The comments were a mix of support for me and absolute rage directed at my family. But more importantly, people were asking questions. People who knew my family, who'd been at Meredith's party, who were now looking at the side-by-side comparison and realizing how calculated the cruelty had been. Wait, Barbara told me Arya was mentally unstable and had made up the party for attention, one comment read. But she clearly rented a real venue and had real food. Why would Barbara lie? I've known this family for years, another said. I always thought something was off about how they treated Arya. This is really disturbing. My mother tried a damage control. She posted her own response. I'm heartbroken by Arya's post. She's been struggling with mental health issues and we've been trying to get her help. The party was canceled because we were concerned for her well-being. We never imagined she'd go through with it alone. We love her and want her to get the help she needs. It might have worked, except for what I did next. I posted the receipts. All of them. The rental agreement for the venue, signed and paid for 3 months prior. The text messages from my mother confirming she knew about the party. The call logs showing I'd personally contacted every guest. The recordings of my mother calling those same guests and telling them not to come, including her comments about my mental health. Then I posted the photos from Meredith's party, the ones that had been flooding my phone all night. I created a side-by-side comparison. Me alone in an empty hall versus my entire family living it up at an opulent celebration. My mother says the party was canceled, I wrote, but she never told me. She never told the caterer I'd already paid. She just made sure everyone went to my sister's party instead. You can see my whole family here, including my mother, celebrating while I sat alone. This is premeditated cruelty, not concern for my mental health. The internet lost its mind. Within 24 hours, my story was picked up by local news. Within 48 hours, it had gone national. Within 72 hours, I was being interviewed by major networks, and my mother's charity was launching an investigation into her role after someone leaked evidence of the embezzlement I'd documented. But I wasn't done. Not even close. While the media circus exploded, I filed for emancipation. With my uncle Marcus representing me, we went before a judge with 2 years' worth of evidence. The forged documents accessing my trust fund, the documented abuse, the medical records showing suspicious accidents, the recordings of my mother and Richard discussing their plans. The judge took one look at the evidence and granted my request immediately. She also froze all access to my trust fund and launched an investigation into my mother's fraudulent power of attorney. That was when my family realized they were in real trouble. My mother tried to call me. Richard tried to show up at my grandmother's house. Meredith posted a long, tearful apology on social media claiming she'd had no idea about the party conflict and was devastated by the misunderstanding. I ignored all of it. I was busy working with forensic accountants to trace every penny that had been stolen from my trust fund. I was busy giving depositions about the abuse. I was busy watching my family's world crumble. The investigation into my mother's charity revealed she'd embezzled over $300,000 over 5 years. Richard's business, propped up by my trust fund money, collapsed when the cash flow stopped. The house, the one I'd grown up in, the one my father had bought, went into foreclosure because they couldn't make the payments without stealing from me. And Meredith, oh, Meredith. I made sure the evidence of her academic dishonesty reached her university. The device Richard had bought her for the SATs? I had video of her using it. The papers she'd paid other students to write. I had transaction records and testimony from the students she'd exploited. She was expelled. Her acceptance to grad school was rescinded. Every door she'd cheated her way through slammed shut in her face. But the best part, the absolute peak of my revenge, came 4 months later. I stood in a courtroom and testified about everything they'd done. Every cruelty, every theft, every attempt to break me. I showed the judge my scars from the accidents. I played the recordings of them planning to kill me. I presented evidence that they'd isolated me from my father's family and stolen my inheritance. My mother and Richard were charged with fraud, embezzlement, child endangerment, and attempted murder. They were looking at decades in prison. Meredith wasn't charged criminally, but the civil suit my uncle filed on my behalf named her as complicit. She'd known. She'd participated. She'd benefited from the abuse and theft. The judge ordered them to repay every penny they'd stolen from my trust fund, plus damages. The total came to $1.7 million. They didn't have it. They had nothing. The house was gone, the business was bankrupt, and my mother's assets had been seized to repay the charity she'd robbed. I'm sorry, my mother sobbed in court, her designer clothes replaced with an orange jumpsuit. Arya, please, you're my daughter. I love you. I made mistakes, but we're family. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. You stopped being my mother the day you decided my trust fund was worth more than my life, I said. You're not my family. You never were. She was sentenced to 15 years. Richard got 12. They were both led away in handcuffs while reporters snapped photos. Meredith sat in the gallery crying, not for me, not out of remorse, but because her entire life had imploded and she finally understood that there were consequences. I walked past her without a word. 2 years later, I stood on the stage at my college graduation. My grandmother and uncle sat in the front row cheering as I accepted my diploma summa cum laude. I'd used my restored trust fund to attend a prestigious university, to get therapy to process the trauma, to build the life I should have had all along. I'd also used some of it to start a foundation for children escaping abusive families, a resource I wished had existed when I needed it most. My mother and Richard were still in prison. They'd be there for years yet. I never visited, I never wrote. As far as I was concerned, they were dead, more dead than I'd been when I had my second chance. Meredith had disappeared from social media. Last I heard, she was working retail in another state, still trying to outrun the scandal. Her name was forever linked to mine in search results, forever associated with the viral story of the birthday party no one came to. She'd sent me a letter once, forwarded through my lawyer. I never opened it. Whatever she had to say, I didn't need to hear it. She'd watched me dying at the bottom of the basement stairs and closed the door. That told me everything I needed to know about who she was. As for me, I was thriving in ways I never had in my first life. I had friends, real friends who valued me. I had my father's family back in my life. I had opportunities and freedom and joy. I never went to another family event, just like I'd promised myself that night in the empty banquet hall. I didn't need to. I'd built my own family, my own life, my own future. The last time anyone from my old life tried to contact me was 3 years after the trial. Meredith called from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want?" I said flatly. "Aria." Her voice was small, broken. "I'm calling because Mom died. Cancer. She was sick for a while, but they couldn't treat her properly in prison, and I waited. I felt nothing. The funeral is on Saturday. I thought you should know. She asked for you at the end. She wanted to see you." "No," I said simply. "But she's our mother. She was never my mother. A mother doesn't plot to murder her child for insurance money. She made her choices. I made mine." "Aria, please. I know we hurt you, but—" "Hurt me?" I laughed, the sound bitter. "Meredith, you watched me dying. You closed the door and left me there. In what world do you think I owe you or her anything? That's not what happened." But her voice cracked. She knew exactly what had happened. I was young. I was scared. You were 19. You knew exactly what you were doing. You all did. I've changed. I've spent years regretting. I don't care. And I realized as I said it that it was true. I didn't care if she regretted it. I didn't care if she'd changed. It was too late. And it didn't matter. I died, Meredith. Maybe not in this timeline, but in every way that matters. I died in that house. And I came back, and I made sure you could never hurt anyone the way you hurt me. That's the end of our story. Don't call me again. I hung up, blocked the number, and went back to my life. I graduated with my master's degree the following spring, started a career in corporate law specializing in estate planning and fraud prevention, helping other people protect their assets from predatory family members. I got really, really good at it. By the time I was 25, I was making more money than Richard had ever dreamed of. My father's trust fund, carefully invested and managed by people who actually cared about my well-being, had grown substantially. I bought a penthouse apartment with a view of the city, adopted 2 rescue dogs, and dated people who treated me with respect and kindness. I never married, never had kids. I'd seen what family could do when it turned toxic, and I was content with the chosen family I'd built instead. On my 30th birthday, I threw myself a party. A real one in a gorgeous venue with hundreds of guests, friends, colleagues, my grandmother and uncle. The people who'd stood by me when my story went viral and stayed, even after the cameras went away. Everyone came. We danced until midnight. We ate cake and laughed and celebrated, and not once did I think about the family that had tried to destroy me. They were footnotes in my story now, cautionary tales I sometimes shared with clients who were going through similar situations. You can survive them, I'd tell people sitting in my office, their hands shaking as they described their own abusive families. You can survive and you can thrive and you can build something better. I'm proof. And I was. The girl who died alone at the bottom of the basement stairs, unloved and unmissed, she got her happy ending after all, just not the one she'd originally lived. Sometimes I wondered what happened in that moment between death and rebirth. Why was I given a second chance when so many others weren't? What cosmic force decided I deserved another shot? I didn't have answers. Maybe there weren't any. Maybe it was random. Chance, a glitch in the universe, or maybe some part of me had been so angry at dying that way that I'd willed myself back. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I'd taken that impossible gift and used it to save myself. On the night of my 30th birthday party, as I stood on the balcony looking out at the city lights, my best friend Sophie came out to join me. "You okay?" she asked. "You've been quiet." "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. I was just thinking about how different my life could have been. "Well, I'm glad you're here." She clinked her champagne glass against mine. "And I'm glad you invited me to your party." I smiled. "I'll always invite you to my parties. And you'll always come because that's what real family does." "Damn right," she grinned, "but now come on. They're about to bring out your cake." "And Aria? It's huge. Like stupidly huge. We're going to be eating birthday cake for a week." "Perfect," I said, following her back inside to the warmth and laughter and love. I never went to another family event. I didn't need to. I had everything I needed right here. Epilogue, 5 years later. The email came on a Wednesday afternoon, forwarded from my assistant with a note. "Thought you should see this." It was from Meredith. I almost deleted it unread, but something made me click. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the knowledge that enough time had passed that she couldn't hurt me anymore. The email was long, rambling, desperate. She was broke. She was alone. She'd burned every bridge, exhausted every connection. Richard had died in prison 2 years ago. She'd been evicted from her apartment. She needed money. She needed help. She needed me. "I know I don't deserve it," the email read. "I know I destroyed everything. But you're doing so well, and I'm family, and doesn't that mean something? Doesn't blood matter? Dad would have wanted you to help me." I read it twice. Then I wrote back. "You're right. Blood should matter. A sister should protect her sister, not close the door while she's dying. A mother should love her daughter, not plot her murder. A family should show up to birthdays and celebrations and important moments. You taught me that blood means nothing. You taught me that family is a choice, and you chose to destroy me for your own benefit. I'm successful because I survived you. I'm happy because I walked away from you, and I will never, ever give you anything. You chose her birthday party over mine. I chose my freedom over you. We're even. Don't contact me again." I hit send, then blocked her email address. My assistant poked her head into my office. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect," I said. "Aswas, can you do me a favor? I want to make a donation to our foundation. $100,000. Put it toward the scholarship program for kids escaping abusive homes." "Of course. Any specific designation?" "Yeah," I smiled. "Dedicate it in memory of the girl I used to be. The one who didn't know how to save herself. Yet. She deserves to be remembered." "That's beautiful," my assistant said softly. "I'll take care of it right away." After she left, I turned back to my computer and pulled up the photos from my 30th birthday party. Hundreds of images of genuine smiles, of people who'd chosen to be there, who celebrated me not because they had to, but because they wanted to. I thought about that 18-year-old girl standing in an empty banquet hall, documenting her abandonment. She'd been so scared, so hurt, but she'd also been so smart. She'd known that moment was the beginning of her freedom. even if it felt like the end of everything. We did it, I whispered to her memory. We survived. We won. My phone buzzed. My grandmother texting to confirm our dinner plans for the weekend. My uncle sending a funny meme. Sophie asking if I wanted to catch a movie tomorrow night. My real family, the people who showed up. I replied to all of them, my fingers flying across the keyboard, making plans and sharing jokes, and building the life that girl in the empty banquet hall had dreamed of. They chose her birthday party over mine. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it taught me that I didn't need them. I never had. I just needed myself and the courage to walk away and never look back. And I never, ever came to another family event. Why would I? I had my own life to celebrate.